Dear Casey, the first time that I became a fan of yours was through the musical Almost Famous that you starred in on Broadway. I remember listening to the soundtrack of it, and my absolute favorite song on the entire album was No Friends. I can remember listening to it for the first time on YouTube, back whenever it popped up on my feed, and I just loved that song so much that I would always be going back to it and listening to it over and over again. That song is just so incredibly beautiful, but it's also a song that just resonated with me. It's a song that reminds me of myself, how I feel as a person, as a writer, especially in this part of the song. And yet, they feel like my friends, so if they aren't my friends, then what are they? Just some people I met again, who aren't my friends, or are they? See, I haven't had so many friends. Well, really not had any friends at all. I just know that I could use a friend to call my own, to make me feel less alone than I am. There were just so many times where I felt that way. A lot of people I had met would feel like my friends, but deep down they aren't real friends. When you realize that they don't care about you as a person, or even as a real friend, that's just the part of that song that really describes how I feel. Sometimes it just really hurts when you realize that deep down, those you thought was a friend and worked with and knew, yet the more you think about it, the more you realize they're not a real friend. Almost Famous is also something that I can relate to in so many ways. I think the biggest way is how much I can relate to William Miller in so many ways. I had grown up with an overprotective mom. Growing up, my mom wouldn't allow me to go to other people's houses unless she knew the parents. As I had gotten older and older, she became more and more protective. I lived in an extremely sheltered life. There's so many things I don't know, and I am definitely someone who doesn't know about sex. When I was at the tap house, there was a team that had the name 1 MILF, 2 DILFs. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? My mind had drawn a blank. I remember asking my friend Isabel, and she told me. On bingo, every time the number 69 had gotten called out, I was always annoyed, and I mean always annoyed. I would yell out, "Get a grip, people!" In high school and even college, when people talked about it, I would zone out and start daydreaming. Those conversations were never the ones that I had with my mom. In junior high, when I was in the 7th grade, my mom signed a paper where we got to talk about AIDS and STDs. Walking into that classroom, everyone was excited, and I groaned and rolled my eyes in annoyance at them. After school, my mom gave me the talk. While asking questions about it, my face had turned bright red, and I ran out of the room and up the stairs. Those times and countless more are how I could relate to how sheltered William was with his mom. You know those moments where his mom would say these things the first time he went to a concert to write about the band Black Sabbath? Don't take drugs! That mirrors the times that I would go to the Bosque River Tap House, where she'd tell me not to drink, though I won't drink alcohol anyways. I remember talking to these 2 guys that are around my age about bingo and how much the cards are, and when it happens, like the day that it happens. Well, my mom and I had this conversation. Who were those boys that were talking to you in line? What did they want? When I told her, she got into protective mode. She eased off a little, but yeah. When William's mom found out that he was going to write about Stillwater from Rolling Stone magazine, no, more than 4 days, and I want you to give me a phone number, where you are every minute. I want you to call me twice a day, and you do not miss more than one test. That was similar to so many conversations that I have had with my mom, such as when I've gone off to camp, but also how she would always be wanting me to call her before her bed, those times that I was at youth camp. I think, though, that William's relationship with his mom is definitely one where I see my own life in a way. If I'd ever wanted to go out, these are the conversation questions she would ask. With who? Where? Who's that? Until when? How are you getting there? When are you getting home? Is anyone else going to be there? A boy? As for my friends, oh boy. I am not sure if you have ever seen the TV show Gilmore Girls, but if you have, then you know what it means to be getting Gilmored. Often, constantly. If my mom wanted to know more about my friends, she would be asking these questions. If they go to church, what kind of church do they go to? What do their parents do for a living? How old are their siblings? Do they have a job? What's their social security number? The list does, in fact, go on. Moment that my mom had asked me about my friend Sarah, like her last name, Fish. That sounds made up. It's not, Mom. My mom's so protective, she follows my friends on social media. She used to go through my phone growing up, and those conversations are still not easy ones to have. Such as when she got Discord because I had it, or even Letterboxd. So not only that, but my mom, the reason why my mom is so protective over me is because I am on the spectrum. I have autism. So, in case you're wondering, Casey, how I got diagnosed, I'm about to tell you that story. So, the subject that I know the most about is movies. When it comes to movie, I can usually name the cast and the director, even the year it came out. I'll give you an example. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, starring Henry Thomas, directed by Steven Spielberg. Came out in the year 1982. I don't remember reading all the awards it got nominated, but I know it did get nominated for Best Picture, but it lost to the movie Gandhi. If you ask me, E.T. should have won. And not only that, but when I was a kid, I stuttered really, really bad. I would say things like what I did that happen. I would. There were times where I just couldn't form the right sentences. And my mom had me in speech class because of my stutter. Not only that, but I had a harder time in school. I think I remember telling you about that, though. And so there's two different kinds of, like, I'm not sure how to explain this, but there's I'm sorry. There is hypersensitivity, and then there is hyposensitive. And I am hypo. So you're probably wondering what that is, aren't you? Well, I can't feel injuries. I remember all these cuts that I have that are all healed, scrapes, and I couldn't feel them. I even remember getting stitches because I ran across the parking lot and I fell in a hole. And on New Year's, I had to spend the entire day in the emergency room instead of seeing The Hobbit. Not fun. And plus, I had to watch Animal Planet for the whole evening. Again, not fun. But I couldn't feel it. I can't feel how hot or cold the ground is whenever I would be walking around the yard barefoot. I can't feel how hot and cold my food is unless it's like steaming, or unless it's like freezing that there's ice on it. Other times I just can't really feel those things. I also remember that I couldn't run flat on the ground. The way I ran, I would be running like I was tiptoeing. My swim coach had to teach me how to run with my feet flat on the ground. He also had to teach me how to jump with my legs straight, and I had a harder time than the other kids. And I just remember when my mom and I saw a psychologist, we talked about those things. I remember being a really little girl and falling in love with this book called Mockingbird by Catherine Erskine. The moment I read it, I saw so much of myself in Caitlin, so much of my life in Caitlin. The way Caitlin talks is how I talked, especially at that age. I always had a hard time making friends. It's never been easy for me to make friends. And to this day, I feel separated from many friends that I have, the few that I have. One of my friends online, I kind of feel like we're being separated. I don't talk about things going on with my family anymore. I don't talk about people bothering me anymore. It's just not easy. There's times where you just grow apart. Nothing you can do. But I'm either too much for people or too little. And the weakness I have is I love people too much. And the reason why is because as a kid, it was hard to know what real love felt like. Especially when you grow up in a broken family. A family as broken as mine was. As a kid, I always loved the movies. I used to dream about meeting my favorite cast and crew and even working on those sets. And I remember whenever my mom took me to see the psychologist, we talked about Mockingbird, we talked about the characters in the movies that I saw that I could relate to. I don't really remember those movies' names at the top of my head, but I just know that I was similar to those characters. I saw myself in those characters. I acted in a similar way. And when my mom took me to the psychologist, we talked about my childhood, we talked about being hypersensitive, we talked about movies, and the next time that I came back were these tests. So she would be taking me to this room and running all of these different tests, and then the next time I came back was when I found out that I had autism. And my mom is so protective over me because of that. She's so protective over me because I am on the spectrum. It's hard for me to read people. And not only that, but when you're on the spectrum, when you have people that are really protective over you, you really wish that you could see eye to eye with them about your dreams. Sad thing is, in my family, that's not really easy. Has it always been easy for yours, Casey? You know how there are times where people grow up in strict households that can relate to movies that have characters that are strict or smother their kids? I just wish that my mom would trust me more. There are times where it can be hard to tell exactly that. My mom does give me a hard time. There was a girl that I used to be friends with, Kaylee. I reconnected with her and saw Godzilla vs. Kong with her. She came and picked me up, and there were a few times where we would hang out together. Well, what I had thought of is how hard it is when people you used to be friends with just start becoming strangers. You ever had a friend your family didn't approve of? You know what? Me too. Kaylee was one. Last night, I found this bingo card that was about strict parents. Here's all the ones that I know from What It's Like. Sorry, my mom said no. Every time Kaylee would want me to hang out, that's usually what I would say. I felt so horrible every time I would say that. I wasn't able to hang out with her. It was not easy when it happened. Next one is, I'll have to ask my parents first. This stemmed from also when I was a little kid and even as I got older and older. If I ever got invited to go places with other people, this was something that I would say. Having to go to church. This is a big deal with my mom and even my biological dad. Every Sunday we would be going to church, and even on Wednesday. Religion is such an enormous part of my life and upbringing. There were times when my dad would tell us that he would set up a meeting with our pastors, especially if he thought we did something bad. So the others are huge fear of failure. That is something that I am definitely afraid of. And there were times where I felt just afraid of failing my parents. There was just so many memories and times where my dad was verbally abusive. And I just became afraid of failing. Internalized homophobia as a kid. Okay, so this is a big one. My family does not know this, but I am asexual. So as a kid, I remember when like girls would be like crushing on people, or they would like go out on dates, and I never really wanted to go out with people. I never really wanted to go out on dates with guys or anything like that. I actually didn't go to prom. Instead of prom, I went to the movies. True story. But anyways, I realized that I was asexual because I remember like whenever somebody was like, was asking me questions, and I was like, no. For me, whenever I start developing feelings for somebody, it's never about sex. It's like wanting to become friends with a person, and you just want to hang out with them. You just want to just like hang out, to like go places with them as a friend. And you also want to like look out for them. And I never told my family. My family's not exactly supportive of that, so I never really told them. The others are sneaky, good grades, not being allowed to wear shorts, good at hiding feelings, afraid of conflict, socially awkward, can't show shoulders, sneaking out, can't talk politics with parents, hiding your electronics when you leave, no sleepovers, fear of adults or authority figures, emotionally distant, and good overall. I am not sure if you have ever seen the movie The Virgin Suicides, which is directed by Sofia Coppola. But if you have, that movie is one that I absolutely love and can relate to in so many ways. It's accurate to what I had gone through growing up. So the movie is one about these four sisters and their lives with each other, but it's also a story about what it's like to be a teenage girl, and it is such a relatable film for me. I saw it back in 2020. Yeah, 2020. Or 2019. It's one of those two, but it's very relatable because it's accurate to my own story in a way, even to what I had gone through as a teenager. So back when I was in junior high, I actually talked about suicide in class. And my teacher called my parents. As a teenager, I couldn't talk about mental health with them, and as I had to learn the hard way, school also. I got shouted at, screamed at the entire night. There were also times where it was just really hard to just talk about it with them, especially my mom. Back when I was in high school, and during my senior year of high school, that was when I was self-harming. Shoulders. I used to call those scars battle scars. That's because of a story I read once where somebody met Peter Pan at a Disney park, and Peter saw the scars on this girl's arm, said, no, he said, he talked about how you've been fighting too many pirates. Those are battle scars, and you are my hero. I don't remember the entire words, but I called them battle scars. I even remember my mom telling me not to tell anybody that I did that senior year. There are times where she would say, you have no reason to be sad. There are times where my brother's friends would say that too. And in school, whenever I would stick up for myself, there were times where not even my parents would take my side. And if I even stood up for myself and they found out, they wouldn't listen to me or even take my side. That just hurts a ton, you know? Though not only that, but my family often made fun of me, which was honestly never a fun time. They would say things like, no more movie talk, and also, Chelsea's talking about movies again. Have you ever seen 1937's A Star is Born? And if so, let me tell you, the scene that I'm going to be telling you is just very accurate. Alright, Casey, here's the scene. You and your movies, that's all you think about. If you ask me, you shouldn't be going to them at all, if you're asking me. Gallivanting about picture shows, houses all cut up with movie magazines, and the other day I caught her talking to a horse with a Swedish accent. Hush, sis, they're only young ones, you know. Ah, Hollywood, you'd better be getting yourself a good husband and stop moaning about Hollywood. You know what she wants to do? She wants to go to Hollywood. I've known it all along. I've seen her making faces in the mirror and talking to herself. That's what becomes of your movies. What would you do if you did go to Hollywood? I'd be an actress. So, there were times where my brother has told me that I would never amount to anything. That was various different times. There were also so many times in my family where I've heard conversations that are very similar to that scene in the movie. Though not only that, but I can relate to that scene so much because as a little girl, I would say lines and quotes from my favorite movies of all time. Though not only that, but I used to write little screenplays and reenact them. I would even be dressing up and say the lines, and there were times where I would be singing my favorite songs from various different movies. Disney ones of all kinds. I just remember just writing things down and acting them out just for fun. I used to, as a little kid, what I would be doing is I would be filming videos of my pets and places I would go, taking pictures of them. And not only that, but another part of the movie, A Star is Born, that I can relate to is knowing what it's like when your family doesn't support your dream of being in the industry, even holding you back from pursuing it. So there were so many times where my mom doesn't want me to pursue it. It's like she says she does, but I know for a fact she doesn't. There were 2 times where I got into acting programs and my mom would have conversations with me, such as how we don't have enough money to get in. Even my brother told me that too. And they were like emails I've gotten from Ella where she would want me to attend her workshops in person, though there are steps that would be preventing me from doing that. Not having a driver's license, for one, or a passport, not having a lot of money to go. It's not just the money, though. My mom would talk about how she doesn't want me to move far away from her. That's something that I have heard numerous times. Even times where I felt like my family is holding me back. Every time I heard those conversations, I felt that way. I really felt like my family was holding me back. And that's just something that I can relate to in that version of A Star is Born. And that scene in the movie, like, that scene that I quoted, that's so similar to me, you know? I've had so many people make fun of me. I've had so many people laugh at me whenever they would say that. I actually remember one time it was like career day in high school. And there's this girl I knew, and she was a senior. And whenever I told her that I wanted to be a director, she laughed like it was the funniest thing she ever heard in her entire life. And then she said, "You're never going to make it. They'll never hire you. Look where you are now. You're at the bottom and they're at the top. You're never going to make it." And that was just so hurtful. I felt so defeated and deflated, and was just like, I felt my dreams being crushed. I also remember, like, other people I knew that told me that. There was a guy I used to know, and he said, "You wouldn't last 5 minutes in Hollywood or the entertainment industry." And I was just like, excuse you? I blocked him and haven't talked to him in over a month. He wasn't really a good friend. But it's even harder when your family tells you that too. Or when your family's holding you back, or when your family makes fun of you for something you love. That's something that I can relate to about Esther. If you ever remake it, do keep me in mind, because I would love to help you with it. I'd love to be a part of it somehow, if it's possible. You've actually inspired me to not give up my dream of being a director, and to keep trying, and more importantly, to not give up on it. Even to not listen to people that tell me I can't. To listen to people that tell me you can, and to people that believe in you, and to people that lift you up. And that just means so much to me. I remember watching the movies you made, and my favorite one is Endless. That one's my favorite. But you inspired me to create, to screenwrite, to create things. And more importantly, to believe in myself again. And I haven't believed in myself in a very long time. Half of it is because of family, half of it's because of people I knew and people I met. But you helped me. You inspired me. And that means the world to me that you did. And I just wanted to say that I hope someday I create stories that you'd love. And if I ever get one of my passion projects off the ground, the biggest one being the Ascendant series, in the Julie Andrews biopic, I'm going to be sending you tickets. But yeah, I just hope you know that you know how much you inspired me. And by the way, happy birthday. So, Casey, here's another voiceover for you. Well, another movie for you. And I really hope you love these. There was a time this year where a guy I knew said something so incredibly hurtful. And you're his number one simp. When I said that, I was not like that at all. That was when this guy said, "Totally then. Why do you post things on your stories 24/7? Okay, first off, those edits where I would be talking about my favorite movies of all time, those were basically my way of recommending movies to you that you would love. But those were also to be telling you about my life and my connections to those movies, how those movies have resonated with me, the stories, and what I love about those films. Though, not only that, but many of the edits that I have done for you, such as the ones to Super 8, E.T., Hook, those were edits to help you feel better. And that's because you were going through a rough time, and I just wanted to create ones that would help you feel less and less alone. So there was like an edit of Super 8 where I said this: "Hey Casey, I hope you're doing okay. It was my first time attending one of your live streams, but I hope you know how much you're helping people and inspiring people. You've definitely done that for me and my new friend Sarita and countless more. You're loved, okay? You have people that love you and support you, and yes, that includes your fans, such as myself. One quote that I have heard is, 'Let art get you through the dark.' Art has helped me heal, and it has helped me cope through rough times and the darkest of times. And that includes artists such as yourself and Julie Andrews and Rel. Anytime you need help and support, I'll help and support you. Hang in there for me, okay? You got this. Keep going. You can survive anything. Keep going like Kyle Reese does, and never lose your faith or hope in others and helping them. Also believe that you can live again and you can help others live. You can do it. I believe in you. Sending you all the hugs in the world." I even remember just writing down what I love about Hook and Jurassic Park and Jaws, movies that I absolutely love and that inspired me to be a director. It was so hurtful when someone who's supposedly a friend says things like that. People that are simps say gross things like how they say an actor is their husband, or that they want to have sex with someone they're supposedly a fan of. I have had people in my life that were like that. Specifically the Austin Butler fans, and how there are people that say those things and act like that make me want to vomit. It's disgusting. The fact a friend even thought I was made me feel so hurt that I felt my legs shaking and twitching. I'm a fan that cares about the person's well-being. I care about you a ton. I care about your well-being and your happiness, but more importantly, who you are as a person. And that's mostly because of how much you mean to me and how much you've inspired me during the hardest times this year. As an editor, when I was creating edits of you, I was petrified. I was scared of what you would say or what you would think or even what you would say. I didn't want to do edits that you would hate. I wanted to do edits that you would love, and that had best expressed my support to you and how much you have helped me this year. How much you've helped me feel better during my fight and during my battle with depression. I have battled suicidal thoughts this year more than once. There were times where I would feel nauseous and would throw up when something or someone upsets me on such an intense and emotional level. There was a friend of mine that I had not heard from for over a year now, Lizzie Salt. The last time she had written a review on Letterboxd, it was about her thoughts. Suicidal thoughts. I posted so much in the comments about how much I miss her and hope she's feeling better. I became friends with Jordan, or as I like to call her, Rosella. We bonded over Anton Yelchin and the Muppets. She was also someone that I recommended the movie Dark Harvest to, and she loved it. I also told her how much that movie helped me feel better when I was grieving, but also your covers and your music. Saddest thing is that me and her, while trying to find Lizzie, we had met another person, Lindsay. She not only lied to me about the times she spoke to Lizzie, but she had also lied about being a Christian. In a review of hers, she said, "I hate God and I hate God lovers." Meaning she hates Christians, and her and a friend of mine not only made fun of me for trying to find her, but they also made fun of me for finding your art comforting, and that just hurt so much. After that, I was not only heartbroken, but wished she apologized, and she never did. I remember creating a photo edit of yours, and that was when I met Jody. I followed her because after getting made fun of and being treated that way and wanted to meet other fans like I was, I would be telling Jody bits and pieces of how much you've helped me feel better, and I remember when she said, "At least you found someone." Though the one that I never forgot was when she had requested a hot edit of you. I am definitely not someone that feels comfortable making hot edits of my favorite actors and actresses, and that also includes you. I didn't want to make something that sexualizes you. The edits that I've seen that do that of actors or singers that I'm a fan of that are along those lines sicken me. It goes against my moral compass and everything that I believe in my heart, mind, soul, and spirit. I don't think it is right to do that to someone who has helped me feel better and who had comforted me in more ways than one, even if we had never spoken or had talked to each other before. Well, I can remember using footage from the McFly files and creating it and trying to make it as respectful as I could, but it was still awful, and well, I failed. She loved it, and I absolutely hated it. I felt an immense amount of guilt, just guilt. I did something wrong because I was pressured, and I never posted it, but I still feel horrible and sick to my stomach that I had ever done it. Then she had requested another one, but this time of you in the movie Dark Harvest. I didn't do another. I remember messaging a friend of mine that does edits also, Luke. I told him what happened and sent it to him and told him how awful I felt, how bad I felt. He told me that if someone makes me do something that makes me feel uncomfortable and makes me want to do something that does, then that's not right. That person is not a real friend, and to let him know next time. I had also told another friend of mine, Sarah, or as I like to call her, Anne. Whenever I had texted my friend Anne, I had sent her two edits that were along the lines of my editing style and what I had loved to do. And I also sent her that edit. And I just remember telling her what had happened. And then my friend Anne had told me, first off, it's good that you had made a new edit that comforts you after making something like that. Second of all, The next time someone makes you do something like that, let me know and I'll take care of it. Eventually, Jody and I became friends, or what had sort of felt like friends. She would like the edits that I would do sometimes or often. There were posts that I had done about internet safety, such as the post that I had done for my followers that were under the age of 18, to not look up the music video Big Bad Wolf because of how inappropriate it is. I didn't go into specifics on how bad it was, though, because again, even the details of it are inappropriate. There was also advice that I would be giving with my post on how to stay safe online with the people that you would be talking to online. So I would be giving tips like don't meet up with random people that you don't know, or just those kinds of tips on how to stay safe, and even to be careful with the people that are messaging you, just stuff like that. And there would also be posts that I had done that were about the subject matter of toxic fans and what a real fan is versus what a toxic one is. And not only that, but there were also posts that I had done about young men my age and younger that are sexualized by the fans, and how fucked up it is that we live in a world that does that. So especially with like the edits and with comments on people's posts and even other edits, I just remember whenever I made that, I was sticking up for you and others that were in the industry that were my age, and even those that are younger than me, and I would be doing it again too. And not long after those were made, Jody, what she did was she reached out to me, and she didn't feel beautiful even though other people had told her she was, and I remember just reassuring her and telling her that she was. And that was when we had FaceTime on Instagram for the very first time. And I just remember being on the phone with her and telling her about the box I sent you back in July. So the movies, the jackets that I had painted, and not only that, but the letter that I had written to you that was really long. By the way, I really want to apologize for how long that letter was. I am kind of a huge writer. I kind of have the tendency to write a lot, so once you hear this, I just wanted to apologize for that. There was a lot on my mind whenever I wrote it. And not only that, but I just remember whenever I told her how long it was, she was shocked. She was really shocked. But I also remember talking about my Sound of Music record that's framed on my wall, which a family friend had bought for me. And it was framed, and I remember showing her that record, even the cases of movies that I have. Though I had also told her about how I was on the spectrum, and then the very next day, she had texted me this. Hi, I can't be friends with you anymore because my mother won't allow me to. I hope you can understand. I'm really sorry. I remember telling Sarah and what happened and how it was weighing me down and what it was like to be friends with her back when we were friends. So what my friend Anne said was this. To be honest, that's all them, not you. And, let's be honest, in this life, not everyone is going to like you no matter how hard you try. And you just can't figure out why. But just focus on your life of moving forward and finding new friends. Think of Anton and Casey, me and Yelena and Katniss and trivia friend I can't remember the name of, and Roselle. We're all still here for you no matter what. So she sent me this. I don't think you did anything wrong. I guess they just didn't like you and wanted to end the friendship with you for no apparent reason. I don't think you're the problem here, it's them. If they don't want to be friends with you, then that's their problem, because they are missing out on an incredible, amazing person and friend. And so it's just really heartbreaking. I have never been someone that people like a whole lot. I wouldn't understand why. Is it because of how passionate I am? Or is it because I care too much about the people behind the scenes of my favorite movies and TV shows? I've never been the kind of fan that's so obsessive they have pictures of celebrities on their walls or mugs or any of those things. In the call that night, Jody showed me a card that had pictures of you on it along with a mug. The only thing that I have in my room is a battered up poster of the Disney movie The Moonspinners and a framed record of the soundtrack to the movie The Sound of Music. You probably remember seeing my poster that night during the phone bank you attended and that I attended that was for Kamala Harris. I just remember seeing those things on the call and thinking, oh, Casey, you poor thing, you poor guy, you poor guy. That night, I also remember that Batshit Girls made a cake of you. So if you're wondering why I call people batshit, that's what I call really crazy fans. Really crazy fans. I also, but I really call the toxic ones that and the stans. And I just remember thinking, oh, Casey, you poor thing. I didn't realize it till now, but she was a toxic fan. She only cared about your looks, not who you are. People that thirst after you and other actors aren't true fans. They're stans. I can't stand people like that, even people that treat other fans like fucking shit. Baking a cake of a celebrity, I'm sorry, but that's just cray-cray. Cuckoo for Cocoa Pops. Am I the only one that prefers a cake of my favorite animal or movie compared to one of my favorite celebrities? If someone had ever made a cake of Julie Andrews for me, I'd throw up. She's my absolute favorite. In high school and college, I had written essays about her and her life, how much I look up to her, what I love about her and her movies, the influence she has on my life, and how iconic she is. If I ever get the chance to meet her, Casey, I would be going into cardiac arrest and then passing out. That's been a dream of mine for the longest time. I've experienced stands before, and the stands that I encountered and met had hijacked the movie Elvis and Austin Butler. So whenever you are getting these, there's going to be a bag filled with all of the notes of everything that I've written for the voiceovers. And there's also going to be details on my experience with the stands of Austin Butler. So I just hope that whenever you hear these, you love them. And I also hope that you love what I created for you. I can remember attending a live stream you had done where you had talked about how you've been feeling after the loss of your great-grandmother and of Gavin. You were not only incredibly vulnerable, but you also seemed heartbroken and even depressed. I feel like doing nothing forever. I wanted to give you a hug, but I also just wanted to let you know how much you've helped me when I felt alone and when my entire world just didn't give me a break from everything that was happening to me and what has been happening. You saved my life when I really wanted to die. I had these nightmares that were about my death and feeling suicidal and just really and truly alone. I remember being so vulnerable about my emotions with how Brooke made me feel so many times this year. The death threats where she had joked and laughed about my death and how her father and brother were coming to my house to kill me. I felt so incredibly scared then and when I found out that she wanted to ruin my chances of making it in the industry and film school, and just so much hurt from everything she had said and done. I remember telling a new guy friend of mine what happened and getting told these things. Hey, so I really appreciate you, but can you stop venting in my DMs without warning or anything? I'm not really feeling my best, and you're like a whole 4 years older than me, and I don't really feel like being a therapist, especially about problems for an adult I hardly know. I don't mean to come off as rude, but apparently not, so please, if you want to vent or something, that's fine, but ask before you do, because it's really draining to come on this account to someone venting to me. My response was, it does come off as really rude. His response was this. Well, that's not my problem, I fear. I tried to be nice and then avoidant. Now I'm getting a bit angry and annoyed, so I prefer to be straightforward. My response was this. I'm sorry for venting and not asking. And then, here's his. I didn't even tell you to fuck off. I told you it was okay as long as you asked, because I'm not a free therapy line. As I said, I appreciate you and your kindness, but I'd rather you didn't tell me about all your problems and their solutions without even asking me, because I'm not feeling great and I don't need to add your problems to mine, and all that without mentioning we really aren't that close. I'm glad you feel safe enough to tell me all that, but I cannot mentally deal with getting on this account and just getting texts from someone I don't know, telling stuff about their life. I'm sorry for my voice breaking. But anyways, I'm going to keep reading these notes I have for these voiceovers for you. A lot of people never like it when I talk about my life and what I'm going through and even struggling with. There are a lot of times where the people that I'm pouring my heart out to would say that I'm selfish or that I'm narcissistic. For me, when I share my story and struggles with others, that's my way of letting people know that they're not alone when they're going through hard times. Being on the spectrum and being diagnosed with autism, I know what it's like to feel alone when you're just going through the motions and just battling so many hardships in my life. So, that whenever I just open up and tell my story or parts of my life to other people that are going through hard times, that are experiencing similar things to me, it's kind of like my way of letting them know, hey, I'm here for you. Or it's like my way of showing them empathy. That's something that people on the spectrum do, is whenever we share our struggles, that is our way of showing empathy. But I just remember getting those messages and just feeling so hurt. Just hurt, but even more is not feeling like I was supported during everything that's going on. And that's just not a good feeling at all. It's just really not, because you feel alone, and you feel alone when you're being vulnerable and you feel like you're not seen. And I just remember that day just crying so hard and so loud on the inside and just wanting to show it on the outside. And I remember like pulling up the movie Dark Harvest that you were in and just crying so hard during that movie that I just had to stop it. And so then what I did was I went to the YouTube app on my phone and I pulled up the cover of My Everything That You Had Done. That's like my favorite, probably my favorite cover you did. And it's arguably the one that saved my life. You know, every time I felt enormously hurt, every time I felt like I was just in this ginormous amount of pain, or like when my mind is just like drowning in hurt and pain by how people have treated me, or how hard depression is for my mind, I would just pull up that cover and I would just listen to it, and then I would just listen to it over and over and over again. But like the reason why is because that cover has helped me feel less and less alone whenever I felt even more alone and not supported. So, here's something else. When I was grieving, there was someone that I used to be friends with, Sarah Vampira. So, in case you're wondering, this year, back in February, I remember my brother and I were just like watching TV, and he told me that our classmate Brayden died of a fentanyl overdose. And I was friends with Brayden's sister in high school. I know I haven't been in contact with her, but the thing is, I remember that he was always nice to me, and he was really nice to my brother. And I remember finding out and just being shocked and bewildered, and just really just like I'm not sure how to describe this. Really, really sad, I guess is the way to put it. But yeah, and not only that, but there was a day where she was accusing me of not caring about her when I was grieving. I still cared, but I just didn't know how to help her, or what to say to her that would be helpful. I didn't want to say the wrong thing at all. So like, when I am struggling mentally and just going through the motions, it can be just really, really hard for me when somebody is like asking me for advice that would be helpful. When I'm going through something, I don't want to say the wrong advice, and the advice that is just not helpful in any way, you know? Or like even advice that would just make things worse, you know? Actually had a therapist that wasn't helping me at all in the past, and this was like back in 2020. Yeah, 2020. And she wasn't like helping me through things that I was going through at the time, like when my parents were divorced, or in the process of being divorced, or like even with like the new father figure, or like not father figure, but like the new boyfriend that my mom had at the time before she met Ned. none of that advice was remotely helpful to me. And I just don't know how to say the right thing when I'm going through things. But that's just me, you know? It doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I don't know how to help you because I'm going through something. Does that make sense? So, like, but I remember, like, whenever she said, and she texted me, when I'm sick, I'm chopped liver. You don't care about me anymore, and I can see that. And I was just like, and I'm just like shocked, but thinking, I care about you. Just because I say I don't know, or like that, it doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to help you during this time and overcome. And like, she was just having like so many things happening to her, and I just didn't know how to help her. But we got into like an enormous argument, and she said we're not friends anymore. And I just even remember when my friend Anne told her how she felt, and Anne got told words that upset her. She's like, I get she's grieving, but she needs to learn not to treat people like shit when they're trying to help her. She's not my problem anymore. Or like something along those lines. But that was just hurtful, because when I was grieving, I was like, mentally, I was really just heartbroken. I was just broken and just felt like, how to explain this? Like like a loss. It's like you wish you knew what was going on, and you wish you could say goodbye. But I even know that, like, when you really think about it, sometimes you realize somebody isn't a real friend. And that very much is what Vampira or Sarah. But it really hurts a lot to realize that, because she wasn't there for me when I was grieving, or when I was like battling depression at the same time. You know, it's like a weird mix. When I felt that way, I was just alone, you know? And I just remember all of those things that were happening. So like in part 1, I talked about, like in the first part for this one, I talked about what it's like whenever you feel alone, when you're vulnerable. And I just remember feeling how I didn't feel supported, but it just really and truly hurts, because I was vulnerable about what was happening, like the abuse, and what was happening in my life. When you feel like you're not supported, when you are vulnerable, it's like you aren't sure who cares about you and who does support you when you are talking about what's on your mind and what's weighing you down. And it's like you don't feel seen and heard. Does that make sense? So, like, I just remember attending your live stream when you were talking about everything that was weighing you down, and my heart just broke. And so I remember doing edits of Super 8. I remember doing edits of Hook. I remember posting a scene from Rudy, and I would be like writing my thoughts down. I would be writing like thoughts at the top, but I was writing things because I didn't want you to feel alone, and I wanted to help you feel better. So whenever I was doing those edits for you, I was really hoping that I was helping you feel better, and that you felt less and less alone, but also that to let you know that I was there for you, that I was here for you because I care. And I didn't want you to feel alone during that time. So when I felt alone, I remember like just feeling broken emotionally and mentally. I often felt all of these heavy thoughts and just intensive thoughts, and it just felt like nothing could make them go away. But I have to say though, you know, your cover of My Everything, So Close, there's another one called Where I Belong. Those ones that helped me feel less and less alone when I had that time and time again. And even the song No Friends from Almost Famous. But I just remember wanting you to know that you're not alone, but even just rooting for you during everything that has happened this year, and just wanting you to know that you matter, you know? I just wanted you to know that you matter in this world, and that even though I'm just a fan, I really wanted you to know that that I was rooting for you, you know, every step of the way, and just like cheering you on, because I know how it feels when you feel alone. But I also just wanted to let you know that I was rooting for you every step of the way, you know, and knowing that you can overcome it. And a lot of people can overcome anything that comes their way, even though there are times where we're just stuck, you know, in a mental loop, and we just don't know how to overcome that. But I just hope that what I've done has helped you feel better. So for the next couple videos I'm going to be making for you, I am going to be diving into the movie Dark Harvest and what I had loved about the movie, and even my favorite things about it and the characters, especially Richie. So the movie is not only a tearjerker, but I honestly remember watching the movie and thinking of just how much the character Richie reminded me of George Bailey from my personal favorite Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life. I honestly think that the reason why is because of how much of a dreamer Richie is. He dreams of making it big, but what he dreams of also. So Richie dreams of leaving town, he dreams of seeing the world, and I remember watching the movie, and that part of him really reminded me of George Bailey, because he dreams of making a name for himself. He dreams of being he just dreams of being the person that he dreams of being. You know, he dreams of being somebody that he can make a name for himself. He dreams of just so many things. But the biggest one is he wants to see the world. He wants to go out there. And I think that is what reminded me of George Bailey, but also when it comes to the ending, he never got the chance to see the world. He never got the chance to live the life he wanted. And that's just, heartbreaking. But the dreamer aspect of him and the relationship with his brother, that reminded me of It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, I know that's crazy. But it just did. So, in my opinion, Dark Harvest is less of a horror and even more of a tragedy. At least in my opinion, it is. So the reason why I think it's a tragedy is really because of what happens in the town. So I remember watching the movie and thinking it's like Pumpkinhead meets the Hunger Games meets the Outsiders, because there's scenes where like the kids are killing each other. But the other thing is like the town has a really like dark tradition with Sawtooth Jack. Just an incredibly dark tradition. And the tragedy is that I think the story is about something that I'm going to be diving into. So I just remember reading somewhere that the novel dived in depth of an underlying theme, that being generational curses. So in case you're wondering what that is, the definition of a generational curse is a person who's committed to building a legacy by breaking the cycle of emotional, mental, and financial poverty that previously plagued their lineage. And I just remember reading that somewhere, I think it was online, about the book, and I honestly think that's incredibly true when it comes to the movie, but also with the story of the film. So in the movie, Richie has always dreamed of leaving the town. He wants to get out. He wanted to make a name for himself. It is in fact his story and what happens to him that fit the definition of the generational curse. The best way to describe the movie you were in is Outsiders meets Pumpkinhead meets the Hunger Games, though in the best ways possible. The story of Richie in the town and what happens in the story is one that's compelling in the best ways, and in ways that show the horrors of what it's like to live in a family that does in fact feel cursed. The saddest thing about the real world is the times where families experience hardships, and the times where a cycle continues, the cycle of abuse. There are children in our world, who were abused: mental, physical, verbal, religious, psychological, and yes, even sexual. Breaks my heart that it happens in the world. Even more is when the children that were abused as children have grown up to become abusers. It's something that does happen, and something that we see and hear and may not even know it. People can have sympathy for those children that were abused, even empathy, in the hope that curse is broken, or in other words, the cycle. And I just think that the most heartbreaking thing is that there are times where the abused do become the abuser, and that's something that we see quite often. It's something that happens so much, and it's just really devastating. It's very devastating that we live in a world where children are being abused in those ways. Even how it affects them and their mental health, and even their physical health, their minds, their dreams, their livelihood, their souls, their spirits. Like, we live in a world where that does happen, and when they become the abuser, it's just devastating. It's heartbreaking. And I honestly think that with the movie, the fact that Richie was this character who wanted to get out, but I think the reason why it's like a generational curse is because we see how the cycle was being continued with his brother. And their relationship was really sweet. So my favorite scene in the entire film is the scene with him and Kelly in the car. In that scene of the movie, he says that his brother was thought of to be a hero by the town, but really he was just a kid. And in that scene, Richie also talks about how he loved to work on cars with his brother and the gears and things like that. I just loved that scene in the movie. My favorite thing about that scene is that we see a glimpse of the friendship between Richie and Kelly, but also even how Richie's this character that wants to make a change. He wants to change things. He wants to be somebody that changes things for the better for himself. And I think that's something to really love about his character, is that he tries to do the right thing. He wants to do the right thing. And as the night continues, he finds out that Sawtooth Jack was his brother. His brother never escaped town, never got out of town. And his brother was also sacrificed and became Sawtooth Jack. And when Richie discovers that, you just feel like you really want to give him a hug. You know, you really want to give him a hug. You really want to tell him everything's going to be okay. You really want him to get the happy ending that he deserves, that Kelly deserves, that people in the town actually deserve, but that's not something that's going to happen. I remember seeing this documentary. I don't remember the name of it or anything, but I remember someone said that in real life, people want a happy ending, but sometimes there's not a happy ending. And I think the movie is one of those cases. You want a happy ending for Richie. You want a happy ending for him. You want him to just live the life he dreams of. You want him to accomplish everything he dreams of. But really, you also are rooting for him. You're rooting for him. You just are cheering for him. I always loved stories of the underdog. I kind of think Richie is an underdog in a way. Because he comes from nothing. He comes from a town, small town. And I come from a small town too. I remember being at the tap house, and I remember this like older guy talking to me and my friend Isabella. And I remember telling him I wanted to be a director, and he said, "You really think you can do it? A small town girl like you think you can make it big?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I can." But I think the saddest thing is that when you're not supported by people around you with your dreams, when you have people holding you back, or when you feel like you're not worthy enough, I guess is the way to put it. You feel like you're not worthy enough for anything. It really breaks you. You know, it really breaks you. There are times where I felt like I wasn't worthy enough. There are times where people would tell me, nobody in that industry is going to love you. And that's just heartbreaking to hear. There's times where people told me, you won't last 5 minutes in Hollywood. There's times where so many people would say all of these hurtful things and just treat me in a way that just breaks me. And I can't do anything about it. I can't change their minds about me. I can't do anything. And that's just, the truth. But I just remember watching the movie and seeing myself in Richie. I don't want to be trapped in a life I don't want. Something which is very similar to Richie is he became trapped in a life that he doesn't want, and he was this boy that wanted to break the cycle. He wanted to break that generational curse. So, just a heads up, I'm going to be diving into some heavy topics, especially abuse. So when you're listening to this, I hope that when you hear it, it moves you, but also that really just you love what I have to say. I'm so sorry for being at a loss for words. I apologize for that. One thing that I haven't told you yet is that I have a broken home in life. I know how it feels to be in a family that's just broken and falling apart. Right after my dad wasn't a part of our family anymore, I became aware of my brother becoming more and more of an alcoholic. There were friends he was hanging out with that weren't discouraging him from it. Cody, or as I like to call him, the jackass. I remember my mom being away and spending the night at her boyfriend's house. There were times where he was playing beer pong with his buddies. There are healthy ways to cope, and there are unhealthy ways to cope. My brother was drinking as a way to help his mind, like to calm himself. Whenever he would have trouble with his girlfriend, whenever he was having issues with girls that were mistreating him, or even struggles with his dad, he would be drinking. I would see him drink more and more and more. And it was really hard. There were times where my brother was coming home and he would be drunk, and there were times where I would help him up the stairs. There were times where I would be cleaning up after him. And this year has been really, really hard. Mainly because I would see how far he's gone into alcohol. And I'm really proud of him for sobriety and getting sober, and I really hope that he continues, but loving an addict is never easy. Believe me, it's never easy. You want it to be, you hope it to be, and you wish it to be, but it's not. It comes with heartbreak and tears, and you're just trying to hold yourself together and praying that things work out in the end. As a little girl, I witnessed my brother being abused by my dad. Physical abuse especially, and that was the biggest one to witness happening to my brother. I've seen those events, and often it just weighs me down. As a little girl, my father would beat my brother so bad that my brother would just about have to be hospitalized. Times where my father nearly did that to him, and as a little girl, I felt alone. I understand what it's like to be in Richie's shoes and try and do the impossible and break my family's generational curse that we have. My father was abused by his parents. My mom told me stories what it was like to grow up, and in a way that was passed down to when it came to what I had gone through. My father was verbally abusive towards me. Not only that, but the way his words had affected me to this day are still on my mind. When you see the cycle try and be broken by Richie, that's very similar to me. I want to break that generational curse that's in my family. Not only that, but I also want my dreams to come to fruition. The most heartbreaking thing is how trapped Richie was in the movie. Every time he had tried to escape the town, he was stopped. It even had gotten beat up by his local sheriff in the town. Richie is one of my comfort characters, not gonna lie. I don't want to live a life that I don't want, or to be trapped in the life that I don't want. I want to be the one that breaks the generational curse on my family. I don't want it to continue on. I want to be the one that breaks that cycle, to end that cycle. I can remember watching the movie and crying with what had occurred. Richie comforted me and in a way made me realize that I can break the generational curse and that it's something I could do and believe that I can. I remember just watching the movie, and whenever he goes in the scene where he says, I have to end this tonight, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I have to be the one to break that cycle. I have to be the one that can. I believe that I can. I must believe in myself. And that I need to be the one to believe in myself too. And that's just really, really hard for me. I don't believe in myself a lot of times. I know that sounds odd. I know that sounds crazy, but I just don't. I'm not overtly confident in myself. I mean, I always struggled with self-image. There are times where even I don't think that I can make it. There are times where I don't think I can. And it's sad, you know? It really is. I just remember watching that movie and seeing that scene. It gave me hope. Is that crazy? Is that odd? Is that silly? Is that stupid? It gave me hope in myself. And that I can. And I have to believe that I can. Richie believed that he could. And there are times where we watch a movie and it just comforts us whenever we have hardships. And whenever we're just going through the motions. My escape and my comfort is, it's movies. And that film was comforting to me this year, especially near the beginning of the year, whenever I was just going through such a hard time. But not only that, but I just loved that scene and even how that movie made me realize that. And that character comforted me, and in a way, like, he made me realize that I can break the generational curse. And that's something I could do and believe that I could. I saw how the cycle continued with my sister, and even how it wasn't broken. She didn't let me or my mom or brother visit my nephew except on her terms. Not only that, but also my grandparents. She would be isolating us with the time. Nowadays, I don't really see him anymore. And my nephew's moving far away soon. There's nothing I could do to stop it. it's just the entire thing is really heartbreaking. Not only that, but she would only allow us to visit him on her terms, her time, her day, etc., etc. And I can just remember all of those conversations my mom would have about how she's treating us, but also how her behavior is wrong. She would be talking about how isolation from family is a form of abuse. And it's something that abusers do. And I can't help but feel sad, stressed, whenever you just have all of these things going on in your life. When it comes to family, when it comes to hardships. And I just hope and pray that my sister changes. I had lost faith in her a long time ago. You see, she dated this guy that I nicknamed Maggot. And the reason why is because he had so many red flags. But it was like a mile-long list of red flags with that guy. And last year, he was just really incredibly ugly to me. And he told me to jump out of the truck. And I did. So one thing you should know about me is that I am a very, very literal person. Super literal. But that day, my sister took his side and she didn't stick up for me. I never told her how that day made me feel, and I don't even think that I could even tell her. The saddest thing is nothing I could say, nothing I could do would make her change her mind. It was like my relationship with her and life with her meant nothing. I hope and pray she changes and treats me and everyone else better. But also that cycle isn't passed on even more throughout my nephew's childhood. Instead, he has one that me and my sister would have loved. There were fun times. There were happy ones. It's hard to see that. It just is sometimes. I hope that when I am a mom and when I adopt children, that they have the one I would have loved. One without the abuse and filled with love instead. In a way, watching the movie you had started made me realize that. Weird, right? There are times where we watch films and their stories are just comforting to us because they make us realize parts of ourselves, parts of our lives, and our hopes and our dreams. But there are times where just stories can really help us through hardships. And I just remember realizing everything that's been happening to me this year and the past. My family is cursed. My brother told me what he really was doing in high school. I just remember being so shocked. Just so unbelievably shocked and felt like I got hit with a ton of bricks. And I just didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to say. Weird, right? Though many of my favorite films were always there for me. In a way, my favorite movies are my therapy. They comforted me. They helped me through so many things, through grief, through depression, through anxiety attacks, through really intense depressive episodes. Whenever I can't sleep at night, whenever I feel alone, whenever I feel scared, or just so many things. even with bullying, whenever I was bullied back in elementary school and onwards, movies were what comforted me. It wasn't therapy, and I know that sounds sad, but movies were just comforting to me in a way, and I know this sounds really stupid, but I always felt like God would send those movies to comfort me, to show that He loves me, that He loves His daughter. I know that sounds crazy, and I know that sounds odd, but that's just something I always felt, and something I always thought. One of my favorite movies of all time since I was a little girl was Homeward Bound and Opal Dream and Soul Surfer and Mary Poppins. All of my favorite films comforted me, and so did Dark Harvest. And it helped me realize it helped me realize that I can break that cycle. And I just love the movie for that, but the story and just everything else about it, I loved it. And I really hope whenever you listen to this, you just love what I have to say, most of all. By the way, happy birthday and Merry Christmas. For this voiceover, Casey, I'm going to be talking about the movie E.T., which is your favorite movie of all time. And it's also one of my favorite movies of all time, too. So I'm going to be talking about how I loved the sci-fi genre because of it, or rather how it paved the way for me to love the genre that is, in fact, sci-fi. What I want you to do is close your eyes and step into your DeLorean because, Casey, you're going to be traveling back in time when I was a little girl, approximately around the ages of 6 to 8 years old. It was somewhere around there. The first time that I had known about our favorite alien was on a Wednesday night at church. They had a room with an older silver TV that could only play VHS tapes. There were movies I watched with other girls my age or close to it. The VeggieTales Jonah movie, Home Alone 3, Disney sing-alongs, The Land Before Time, Balto, etc. There was a VHS tape of E.T. where the others were on the shelves. I not only loved the cover of it, but I had no idea that I would later come to love it. My grandparents were the ones who had shown the movie to me when I was in fact around that age. More specifically, my Nana. They had in fact told my mom that she should show me the movie, and the sole reason is because I would love it. And they were right. What they did is they bought the movie for me from the local Hastings on DVD. Growing up, Hastings was my favorite store, and it was also the store where I had bought various different movies and books. They had an apple tree in the back of the store for people to sit on as they read their books. Movies could get rented for $1, and you could buy ones there for low prices. It closed down when I was around 15 years old, and I miss that store to this day. It was where I discovered so many of my favorite movies, or where people bought them for me. As a little girl, the story of Elliot and E.T. had in fact captivated me. Though not only that, but it had also resonated with me in so many ways. My favorite thing about the sci-fi genre is how it explores humanity, and even the darkest parts of humanity as well. The movie Interstellar is about a father's love for his daughter. Arrival explores how people communicate with each other and how important languages are in the world. Super 8 explored grief and letting go of the hurt and anger that we feel during those times. AI, artificial intelligence, explores the love that a child has. There's a movie quote that I absolutely love that was from a Disney Channel movie, Phantom of the Megaplex. When we arrive in this world, magic is all around us. You simply have to see a baby discover a butterfly or a toddler splash in the bath for the first time. Yet, as the years passed, simple pleasures aren't quite so simple to find. Myths and legends fall away. Santa's secrets are revealed. Card tricks lose their fascination. True wonder is hard to come by. But there's always magic at the movies. Pirate ships, bicycles that fly. Angels earn their wings. Beautiful women marry handsome men. And we all learn there's no place like home. To destroy that magic, to shatter those moments, to me is a sin so grave, it would be incomprehensible. If there is truly a phantom, my friends, I assure you, it most definitely is not me. That was said by Movie Mason, which is played by legendary actor Mickey Rooney. I've loved movies ever since I was a toddler. My first sentence that I had ever said was in fact, push play. I was in a swing in the kitchen, and when I wasn't swinging anymore, those were the words I said to my mom. Right around that age, I loved to watch the TV show Elmo's World. And when it would end on the VHS tapes we had, I would cry and cry, and my mom would have to go and rewind them. In fact, I had fallen in love with going to the movies at the Omni Theater back when I was 3 years old. So my mom would be taking me there because she had season passes, and they showed all of these different nature documentaries there. And I was just in awe. I loved that theater so much. That theater is basically the home I never had. It's like my hope. It's like my home. I love it so much. There were so many things that I had learned from the movies that I loved, and even ones that helped me cope during the hardest times. Radio Flyer helped me cope as a little girl and see how the events that happened were not my fault. That's not only true, but it's also a fact. I saw myself in Elijah Wood's character. The movie is the story of two brothers, Mike and Bobby. In the movie, they were experiencing a dark time. Bobby was being physically abused by their stepdad, and the movie is dark, but it's because it's about a real issue that happens. As a little girl, I know how that feels to be in Mike's shoes and witnessing the abuse that happened. My comfort movie, Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey, had taught me to always try, and that I can overcome anything that comes my way, and what perseverance truly means. Chance, Shadow, Sassy overcame each and every obstacle that's happened to them in the movie, and they saw their owners again. It's my favorite movie of all time. I love it so much. I learned how to face my fears, to stay true to myself and to be myself, to have faith in the hardest times, and to hold on to hope during them. My escape is movies, and I love how much they've helped me during those times. My mom would say how, when she would take me to school, I wouldn't want to go. I would cry my eyes out and scream and kick. My mom had then made a deal with me. If I last the entire day at school without crying or screaming, then she would take me to the movies on a Friday night. I've seen so many movies and had loved so many that I saw at the theater and on DVD, and even on the TV. I had fallen in love with the sci-fi genre because of the movie E.T. Though not only that, but the friendship that's even between Elliot and E.T. Friends can come from anywhere, and they can have different walks of life and backgrounds, and in the movie, E.T.'s case, different worlds. An alien from another world in a galaxy far, far away that was left behind by his family. He didn't know where he was or where his family were. He was lost and alone, and yes, even lonely. A boy who lives on Earth that's without a father figure in his life as his parents are divorced. He doesn't have a best friend or even one who's going to be sticking by his side through thick and thin, and a person that he could even be talking to about what's happening in his life, though also even someone that he could even be hanging out with. They found each other and had the adventure of a lifetime. Elliot had discovered an alien and one that had understood how he had felt. Elliot helped him be reunited with his family. He helped E.T. create something to send out a message so Elliot could have them be reunited. The movie is such a beautiful story of friendship and the bonds between friends, even how it shows Elliot's story as a character and as a person. At the beginning of the movie, he's feeling alone, and his dad had left and didn't contact him or have a relationship with him. I think that had taken a toll on Elliot in so many ways on an emotional and personal level, and I think that he wished for a real friend. Even a friend that was there for him. E.T. was left by his entire family, and how they bonded, became the best of friends, and helped each other feel not so alone when they had felt lost and just completely abandoned. That's just something that I really love about their story too, is they found each other and they helped each other. And not only that, but it helped me feel less and less alone as the years had gone by, especially as I know how it feels to be in Elliot's shoes. I know what it's like to have a family that's broken and you feel really and truly alone, even to battle loneliness. A lot of people I've known, we've grown apart over the years and we've become strangers again. It's something that you probably know all too well, and even something that you understand. A story of people that were once friends grow apart when they're a stranger. When I was in high school, I felt alone. I was alone. I felt like I didn't have very many people, but even more in my family. My father started to drink a little when his father passed, and then he drank more and more. He would leave me out of the grocery stores, the movie theater, etc. I'd listen and hear the times that my mom would kick him out. He'd say through the door to let him in, and he'd swear that he won't. And then he'd do it again. He would be drinking again. There were so many times where I just feel this really heavy and emotional pain. I can remember a time in high school when my mom and I were watching TV and she had gotten a phone call. "No, Diego, don't." She had ran outside and I heard my brother shout, "God damn," as the car sped out. They crashed into a pole. I remember my mom running out the door. Even a time where my mom would let me sleep downstairs and I'd overhear their conversations and how it had kept getting worse and worse over time. By the way, sorry, I'm sorry for like the times where I would just struggle with like words and just reading on the page. But not only that, but I was just in an enormously dark place in high school during that time of my life. And there was just so much that happened whenever I was in school. And every time I would be finding beer cans, I would just be pouring them down the drain. And I even remember how my mom would tell him to get out whenever she would find out that he was drinking. And she would say, "I have to do what's best for my kids." But not only that, but it was just so much for me because I know what it's like to feel abandoned, and when it comes to a parent, I felt abandoned because my father was drinking so much, and he became an addict. And it's such a beautiful story that resonated with me even more, because I know what it's like to be in Elliot's shoes and to be in E.T.'s shoes, because I know how that feels when you are abandoned, when you feel that way. And it's just, that's kind of the reason why I could relate to the movie so much. The way that I could relate to Elliot in the movie is wishing for a friend. I wished I had a friend during many of those times in high school. So, in high school, my father spiraled further and further into addiction. Further and further, and into an alcoholic. So, I can remember being like 16, and I felt really alone and abandoned. There were times where my father would ask me if he could borrow money, and he would pay me back. There were times where he would be taking me to the movies, and he would lie and say that it was coffee, when in reality it was alcohol. There were times where he would be abandoning me at the store, and my brother would have to come and pick me up. I not only remember that, but I felt like my home was just falling apart and broken. I even remember, like, recently my brother told me that he was actually selling marijuana in high school, and I was just shocked when I found out, and surprised. And realizing how broken my home really was, But during that time, I can also remember having these scars on my shoulders, self-harm scars. I was so depressed by everything that was going on. That was something I did. I even remember talking to my teacher, Mrs. Essery, about what was going on, and just hugging her and crying and crying and crying and crying. One of my favorite films during this time was Honey Boy. I remember going to the theater, and it felt like I was sitting in therapy. I saw so much of myself in younger Otis, in the version of Otis, but the younger one, the one played by actor Noah Jupe. There's this scene in the movie where he says, "I've always been waiting for you to act like a real dad. You haven't done that one time." I remember seeing that scene and just being like, oh my gosh, that's how I feel. Because my father was an alcoholic. Though not just that, but I also remember my father's side of the family, didn't take my mom's side during the divorce. Instead, they took my father's side. There were times where I would just be begging and begging and begging him, Casey, to go to rehab. And there were just so many times where he would manipulate me. He would be telling me lies about my mom, like how she cheated on him, how she allowed my brother to do all these things. And my brother had to go and talk to CPS every single day that school year when I was a senior. And all of those memories, all of that pain, it just stays with you. You can't change the past as much as you want to. You can only hold on to the good and try and move forward. My father's side of the family and I have a really complicated history. I don't talk to them hardly at all anymore. There was a time where I saw the movie Richard Jewell, and I was headed home with my dad. And instead of taking me home, my dad took me to his mom's house. And I did not like the things that were being said about my mom or my brother, even my sister at the house, at my abuela's house. And I just remember begging them to let me go home. That I just want to go home, and they wouldn't. They wanted me to stay when I wanted to go home, and I just really wanted to go home. It was such a dark memory. There's a lot of memories I have from my past that are just really incredibly dark, times that are depressing. But the fact of the matter is, I know what it's like to be in Elliot's shoes and feel like you don't have a father. Because I felt like I didn't have a dad as a teenager, and even as a little kid. When you live in a home that was abusive, and you witness the abuse happening to your siblings, it really takes this toll on you, and you just don't know what to do. Does that make sense? I took an oath to never drink alcohol, to never touch the drop. Though I also took an oath that I would never marry a man that would drink. Especially excessive amounts, and that's really because of my past. I wished for a friend, and I wanted a real friend. I know how it feels to not have real friends that are there for you during the hardest times. This year, I lost 10 friends, 10 or 11. And saying goodbye is the hardest thing to do. And that scene where Elliot had to say goodbye, that scene just always stuck with me. Sometimes, though, when you say goodbye, that's the right thing to do. That's just what I love about that scene. And even the movie as a whole, it's a movie that really stuck with me. I can even remember going to a movie re-release of it back when I was 11 or 12 years old, and it was just magic on the big screen. I also remember laughing for the first time I saw the movie whenever I saw Gertie screaming at the side of E.T. There was a lot of happy memories with the film and just really lovely memories of the movie, and I loved how it explores the themes of friendship and love, and even how loneliness and how it feels to be in a broken home, and having a real friend that helps you during that time. That's why I love the movie.